All right, I see the plants changing again behind us. Where are we now?
This is one of the rarest. Oh, there's a coyote.
Coyote in the Coyote Brush.
Yeah. There's more to hunt here. There might be voles, different types of rodents. There's more cover, so the coyotes come here to hunt, probably nesting birds.
We spoke, because we were looking at plants, we kind of spoke about how the plants benefit the herbivores. Let's talk about how they benefit the carnivores.
Yeah, when you have a richer, healthier native plant ecosystem, you have more insects, you have more birds, you have more rodents, and therefore you have more predators too, native predators. The native coyotes, we've seen bobcats here, badgers. This is actually a remnant coastal prairie, which is actually one of the rarer native plant communities in California. I think only 1 or 2% remain. It was from Oregon to about Santa Barbara, where the ocean influence was good with the fog. And this is your old growth grassland. These are native perennial bunch grasses with native coyote brush. It's sort of a relict here, a remnant ecosystem that the cows could access, but they just haven't. It's too far from the barn and the troughs and all the confined animal feeding operations. And so this has been, by benign neglect, the Park Service didn't even know, I pointed this out to them, that this exists. This used to cover all the ridges in Point Reyes National Seashore and into Golden Gate National Recreation Area. But it's so rare now that this is one of the few places I found it. And there's no cows. There's no cow manure. We've seen deer tracks. There's a coyote and these bunch grasses.
And so are we seeing a reduction in the invasive plants?
Yes, this is, I would say, 80 to 90% native plants. There might be some of the annual weeds that come in here, but this ground cover is so thick that the weeds that specialize in broken soil crust, disturbed ground, they actually are not adapted to this old growth grassland. There's too much cover. There's too much thatch. So this is actually not good for weedy plants. Weeds don't like this much vegetation.
The common factor here, more native plants, less invasive plants, and no cattle.
Correct. No cattle is key, because the cows, these Idaho fescue, red fescue, blue wild rye, and native brome. There's some native perennial California brome grasses, but this is mostly Idaho and red fescue, are delicious to cows. Cows love this. They like it better than those annual weeds. The perennial native bunch grasses actually have more protein and more nutrition than the annual grasslands that are weedy from Europe. So the cows preferentially choose these bunch grasses. They would come here and think that they're in a buffet and just graze these to the ground and non-stop until they get to the roots.
Prove to me the idea of the perennial plant being more likely to resist fire. Let's show me some of these perennial plants that are native.
Well, you can actually see there's less fuel here of the grasses. This is like a fine-leaved perennial Idaho fescue. There's a wild strawberry. There's a lot of greenery here. The old stems come up and they're not as big and thick as what we just saw, which was a more lightly grazed annual grassland. So this gets deeper in with green here. There's less fuel that would be dead every year than an annual grassland that's even lightly grazed.
Now I do see something that looks fuel-ish, but I'm tempted to say that that's an invasive plant that made its way into here.
This is a wild iris, actually. This is native wild iris leaves. That could be it's hard to tell. So it's hard to tell what all of these are in the winter when they don't have seed heads. This could be one of the annual grasses that came in that died back. I'd have to come back in spring.
Well, the roots aren't very deep.
Yeah, that could be one of the annual grasses that is here, just trying to eke a living in this old growth prairie. But you can see how much more tall and stemmy it is.
Yeah.
More big stems instead of these fine green leaves.
And this is
Coyote brush. Native coyote brush, which isn't taking over. This has not been grazed by cattle ever. I mean, it's hard to tell the history of it, but it's obviously not been grazed by cattle heavily for a long time. And we have coyote brush, but it's not taking over. There's still open grassland here.
And you are physically capable of walking through here, hiking through here.
Absolutely.